But let's get right into it. COVID wrecking havoc kind of everywhere. I spent about 40 minutes before the pod trying to get down where it seemed to be doing damage. I'm sure plenty of leagues, cases, teams slipped through the cracks, but 18 Calgary Flames players everywhere in Ontario is now at half capacity for stadiums. The Montreal Canadiens will be playing in an empty stadium tonight against the Flyers and probably against the Bruins on Saturday, who are missing 6 players, including Bergeron and Marchand. No complaints there. 100 NFL players, as far as I can tell. That's players not even going into the plethora of staff, coaches, and whatnot that it takes to make that league function. And then the NBA, I've got a little more details. Probably definitely missing some players on some of these teams, but the Bucks missing Giannis, DiVincenzo, and Portis. The Lakers missing Howard, Monk, Westbrook, and Bradley as of today, as well as Taylor Horton Tucker. The Kings, De'Aaron Fox, Marvin Bagley, Davis, as well as the coach Gentry, and the Nets missing Harden, Brown, Aldridge, Bembry, and Carter. So these are all teams that I would describe as having outbreaks, not to mention the Chicago Bulls, who are the only team so far that have had games postponed. It's, as we see it going on, affecting our daily lives, the news, it's not really surprising to see it carries over here. I'd say the one silver lining or thing to keep in mind is now that everyone is pretty much vaccinated, the chances of long-term health effects, I think, a lot more reduced, as vaccines have shown to really bring down death and severe illness. And with the privacy policy, entered COVID protocols does often mean just close contact. But as time goes on, if they're in it for more than 3 days, then it probably means they've tested positive. So not too sure what to make of this. We don't like to get political here, but some talk about a suspension or a bubble coming. I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to add to that or anything I missed.
Um, with the NBA, that probably seems a little bit more realistic just because of the amount of money they drive through their TV deals and other revenue streams. With the NHL, I don't see it as a possibility just with how important gate revenue is for the NHL. And even the NFL as well, just because larger stadiums, more ticket revenue, they still will survive on the billion-dollar TV contracts. But a bubble is economically disastrous for a lot of these teams, not necessarily for the owners, but the teams themselves. And it was great there for a minute when everyone was enjoying games in person. A lot of the states now have, even though numbers are starting to rise again, they basically declared it over. So I don't think we'll see much change, because as bad as it seems up here in Canada, and we're headed towards another lockdown in the US, there's not much change despite numbers going up because of vaccination, because of policies, because of just an overall sense of finality, that like they're just done with it. They don't want to follow these procedures anymore. I would be very surprised if we saw a bubble of some kind. We could see postponements of games and realignment in where games are allocated. It's just such a logistical nightmare trying to figure everything out. Um, what I could really see happening is the Olympics, players not going, and them trying to fit a bunch of games into that 3-week period as a way to catch up on some of these postponements.
For sure. And I saw one thing saying, looking at last year, they had their COVID, or last season, they had their COVID outbreaks, they weathered it, they carried on. And that's especially with such high vaccination rates, I guess that's kind of similar to where the league was at last year, as players often had priority. I was trying to think of the right fire analogy, but those controlled burns, it sweeps through, and then for a set period of time, it's literally impossible to burn it down again. That's likely so I don't think a bubble is likely either, except it makes more sense to me in the playoffs, because you can postpone games, but come playoffs, but again, that'll be in the summer when flu, COVID just seems to be less viral, less potent, less spreading. Like I said, it's such a dominating headline that I felt we had to acknowledge it. We'll follow it, of course, as it carries on. But as long as players aren't getting long-term illness, if some people have to sit out for 2 weeks, they have to put a pause on for 2 weeks. Not the end of the world. One other thing I'll add about the States, because we Googled this as a family today. California, which has a population of Canada, has about the same number of COVID cases as all of Ontario right now. So that speaks to what I was saying about, like, once the wildfire sweeps through once, the undergrowth all has to come back before it can sweep through again. Our herd immunity working kind of similarly. So that's probably what we're seeing here. It's going to go on for a month, 2 months, and then things will get better is kind of my thoughts prediction.
The difference there is California is always summer, right? Whereas
Yeah.
we are stuck inside when the colder weather comes. That would be a big factor, I would say, is the difference there. But I am so sick and tired of talking about it, and I know we're going to do more. So let's just move on.